ladies and gentlemen, military personnel, friends and family of Chippawa, and our veterans, good morning. On behalf of the Commanding Officer of HMCS Chippawa, I'd like to welcome you to our annual Remembrance Day service. My name is Sub-Lieutenant Khan, and I'm the Intelligence Divisional Officer at HMCS Chippawa and your Master of Ceremonies this morning. I wish to acknowledge that we are gathered on Treaty 1 territory, traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and the Dene people, and on the homeland of the Métis Nation. I am pleased to introduce the HMCS Chippawa Band under the guidance of our Director of Music, Lieutenant Fristensky. Please turn your cell phones to silent to ensure they do not interrupt the ceremony. The restrooms on the main floor are currently out of service and cannot be used. There are restrooms located on the second floor, accessible by elevators if required, just outside the messes and more down the hall. In the event of an emergency requiring an evacuation, please use the exits located at each end of the drill deck and muster outside the front of the building facing Assiniboine Avenue. During the Remembrance Day service, there will be times when I ask those assembled to please stand. If you are unable to stand, please feel free to remain seated. Shortly, our official party will arrive. In our official party today, we have the Honorable Dan Vandel, Minister of Northern Affairs, the Honorable Heather Stephenson, Premier of Manitoba, the Honorable John Reyes, Minister of Economic Development and Jobs, His Worship Brian Bowman, Mayor of City of Winnipeg, Brigadier General Mark Golden, Deputy Commander, 1 Canadian Air Division, Lieutenant Commander Carl Gravel, Deputy Wing Commander, 17th Wing, Master Warrant Officer Patricia Bell, Deputy Wing Command, Master Warrant Officer, 17th Wing, Lieutenant Commander Retired Robert Watkins, Lieutenant Commander Retired Gordon Saunders, Winnipeg Fire and Paramedic Service Chief Christian Schmidt, Winnipeg Fire and Paramedic Assistant Chief Jamie Vanderhorst. Thank you for your attention. The official party will be joining us in a moment. Please remain seated as the sentries take post. Drum Major, pile drums.
Aye, sir. Drummers, quick, march.
The piling of the drums is a tradition from the armies of the past. Prior to battle, armies could conduct prayer services, but never arrived on the battlefield with anything that could serve as an altar, and had to make do with what was available. Armies did, however, come to the battle with drums and other instruments. Drums were piled to serve as makeshift altars. Today, we pile drums as part of this tradition, signifying that a service is underway.
Drummers, inward, turn. Pile, drum.
Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the arrival of the official party, presentation of colors, and the national anthem, O Canada. Color Party, march on the colors.
Halt. Right, turn. Right, turn. Quick, march.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. I would like to introduce Commander Michael Kuehl, Commanding Officer of Chippawa, who will say a few words.
Mr. Vandal, Madam Premier, Mayor Bowman, and other guests, veterans, ladies and gentlemen. And I would also like to personally acknowledge in attendance today Lieutenant Commander Bob Watkins and Lieutenant Commander Gordon Saunders, two of Chippawa's most longest serving veterans who reside here in Winnipeg and have joined us. Every November 11th, and indeed the week preceding, we gather, make speeches, lower the flags, bow our heads, and remember. But what does it mean to remember? Remembrance means different things for each of us, but in all cases, there is often a sense of loss. Some of us remember for specific reasons. We remember the loss of comrades and friends. Some remember for the loss of family or the family they never got to meet. Others remember in a more general sense. They remember the loss of generations that have gone before them. Regardless of our individual reasons for remembrance, collectively, we effectively remember for loss. However, loss is not all that Remembrance Day is about. It's about connecting one generation to the next and to the promise of a better future. It's about building upon what prior generations gave with their sacrifice, and it is also about remembering and honoring those still with us who continue to contribute to this great society in which we live. To quote John F. Kennedy, as we express our gratitude, we must never forget that the highest appreciation is not to offer words, but to live by them. Let us live by the words spoken here and elsewhere today. Let us honor the deeds and sacrifices of those who cannot be with us, and equally those who can. Thank you. Merci. Chemegwich.
Thank you, Commander Kuehl. I would now like to introduce today's chaplain, Padre Paul Giametti, who will come to the dais to provide thoughts and reflections.
Does our world need to reconcile? Does our world need to reconcile? If you're asking yourself, well, what is it first? One of the phrases I've liked to use over the years is to put back into right relationship. It manages to try and find harmony. It manages to find respect and compatibility. To put back into right relationship. Does our world need to reconcile? I've been here with, at a number of Remembrance Day services. I think most of us can recall certain aspects where generations in the past have had to reconcile. Consider the main campaigns and conflicts that have happened in our past. Just mention First World War, Second World War, bombings of cities, loss of ships, loss of submarines. And of course, the material goods and the peoples, the lives that were lost in all of those campaigns. There were people who needed to reconcile. There were people who lost loved ones in the past. They did their duty, maybe. They certainly did what it was that their country needed or wanted at the time. Did they reconcile? And does our world need to reconcile today? I think so. How about considering recent situations, whether it's local or international? We have employees and employers trying to reconcile. We have government leaders and their peoples, those they govern, to be reconciled. We have people who are concerned of being neglected or persecuted unknowingly. They want to be reconciled. If you have a memory of 9/11, the different things that have happened in the Middle East and Afghanistan, what about the things dealing with various peoples across the planet? We have people of different faith, people of different cultural backgrounds who are looking to be reconciled. Of course, we know that there are lots of people on this planet who are of indigenous ancestry. Whether you look at North and South America, Africa, Asia, or Australia, and I have to admit, when it comes to just looking at Europe, Europe is not so much looking at indigenous peoples per se, but they certainly are having to reconcile immigrants and refugees. Does our world need to reconcile? I truly think so. Whatever reconciliation takes as its form, it'll have to most likely require some sincere dialogue. Probably most will require some form of restitution, Restitution of property, maybe, or something equivalent. How about restitution of place in the society and dignity? Most of those attempts at reconciling won't be perfect. Again, consider things of the past, of attempts to try and reconcile. Cities that were destroyed were being rebuilt by the new powers. Business ventures were trying to be reestablished so as to help the local people find a new life themselves and be able to be self-concerning with that. Of course, we consider that no matter what reconciliation has to occur, we hope that in some way they'll be recontacting and re-socializing so that the society of the here and now becomes more equitable, more supportive, more integrated with all. And dare I say, as a chaplain, do I need to say, for reconciling, should there be forgiveness? Does there need to be forgiveness? Can there be forgiveness? I truly believe so. All of us are imperfect. All of us, I'm sure, strive in our heart of hearts to do the best that we can. To bring it more closely to everyone, probably in this room, consider within your own family contexts and friendships. Relationships between spouses, do they need to be reconciled once in a while? Between parents and children, men and women? How about with our ancestors and the current generations? Because sometimes across the time frame, we don't quite understand who came before us. I guarantee you, if they were to time travel, they wouldn't really understand our modern world today. Lastly, and I know it's going to be kind of awkward to say this, because it's not really an even venture of reconciling, but some people are attempting to reconcile with our environment, our planet, and the living creatures which inhabit this world with us. It's going to be awkward to call some of them to the table, isn't it? It's going to be even more awkward if you happen to be in the same room with them. The creatures themselves, I'm sure, don't know what they're up against. And we realize that we who are conscious and have our sciences and have our skill sets and our business ventures and our mechanisms to do things, it'll probably be one-sided. But we're probably discovering that some form, some attempt at reconciliation in our relationship with that, the environment, the planet, and living creatures, there's something to be said for that we are attempting to reconcile. Towards my final point, just related to that same last group of entities, have you reconciled with the weather yet? Not just in Winnipeg, but from lots of places far in Canada and many other places in the world. I don't know if we ever truly reconcile with the weather. But we know that we can't, again, bring things such as the weather to the table to negotiate, can we? We can't do things that manage to follow the dynamics that we try for as human beings with one another. And so we manage to get that raincoat on when it's raining. We manage to put our snow tires on in advance of winter, don't we? Is that the best we're going to get at reconciling with the weather? And hopefully many of you, as winter comes on, have various other things to keep you occupied, interested, and enlivened through the time frame, until next summer, at least. So again, my question is, does our world need to reconcile? It truly does. It will take some time. It will probably be a gradual thing. And if we're lucky, we might be able to complete some of those reconcilings that need to go on before our mortal lives are complete. One thing I can safely say for sure is that we all need to be somehow a part of it every day. Our world does need to be reconciled.
Thank you, Padre Gimetti. I would like to call upon Lieutenant Commander Retired Robert Watkins, who has agreed to provide his thoughts and reflections on naval remembrance. Lieutenant Commander Watkins joined the Royal Canadian Navy in 1943 at the height of the Second World War. He served on board Lochnault, which was tasked with anti-submarine escort duties during the Battle of Atlantic. During his service, he saw action during an attack on a German U-boat 1006 that was sunk southwest of the Faroe Islands. Lieutenant Commander Watkins, if you please.
This Remembrance Day, I thought I would recall how many years have passed from the different wars Canada has participated in throughout the world, and to pay tribute to the men and women who fought in those wars, especially to those who made the supreme sacrifice. Since World War I, it's been 113 years. World War II, 76 years. Korea, 68. And Afghanistan has been 7. We also honor and remember those who served in the peacekeeping missions throughout the world with the United Nations. Today, being the 100th anniversary of the poppy being adopted by the Royal Canadian Legion in 1921, I would like to reflect on the little red flower we wear to remember this special day as a symbol of sorrow and pride. Wearing a poppy at this time of the year is definitely a Canadian thing and has been our official symbol of remembrance since 1921. Canada was the first Dominion in the Commonwealth to hold a poppy campaign. The American Legion held their first campaign prior to Memorial Day in May of 1924. In France, the Bleu de France, commonly called the bachelor button, or cornflower, is the flower of remembrance. In Belgium, a poppy or a white daisy is worn. And in Newfoundland, Labrador, they wear forget-me-nots. The history of the poppy can be traced back to the Napoleonic Wars in the 19th century, over 110 years before being adopted by Canada. The poppy grew over the graves of soldiers killed in the area of Flanders, France. Fields that had been barren before the battle suddenly exploded with blood and flowers after the battle ended. The chalk soil became rich in lime from the rubble caused by the tremendous bombardments. When the war ended, the lime was quickly absorbed and the poppy began to disappear again. Flanders Fields is not just in France or Belgium. It actually stretches from the northeast of France to the south edge of the Netherlands. Across Belgium, south of the plain-dense forest, and then the mountains. North of it is the sea. Flanders Fields, as written in Lieutenant Colonel McCrae's poem, are the strips of French and Belgian soil that run from Dunkirk to the Ardennes forest, just south of Lille, off the coast of the English Channel. American Moina Michael responded to Lieutenant Colonel McCrae's poem with her poem, We Shall Keep the Faith, in 1918. and her French counterpart, Madame Anna Gerton, promoted wearing artificial poppies to commemorate the armistice, as it was called then. People inquire as to how long the poppy should be worn. It is not inappropriate to wear a poppy during other times to commemorate fallen veterans. It is an individual's choice to do so, as long as it is worn appropriately. In closing, I have a poem I would like to read in honor of this day, written by Don Crawford. It is called, "Why Wear a Poppy?" "Please wear a poppy," the lady said, and held one forth, but I shook my head. Then I stopped and watched as she offered them there. But underneath the scarves, and her face was old and lined with care, but underneath the scarves the years had made, there remained a smile that refused to fade. A boy came whistling down the street, bouncing along on carefree feet. His smiles were full of joy and fun. "Lady," said he, "may I have one?" When she pinned it on, he turned to say, "Why do we wear a poppy today?" The lady smiled in her wistful way and answered, "This is Remembrance Day." And the poppy there is a symbol for the gallant men who died in the war. And because they did, and you and I are free, that's why we wear a poppy, you see. I had a boy about your size, with golden hair and big blue eyes. He loved to play and jump and shout. Free as a bird, he would race about. As the years went by, he learned and grew and became a man, as you will too. He was fine and strong with a boyish smile, but he seemed with us such a little while. When war broke out and he went away, I still remember his face that day. When he smiled at me and said, "Goodbye, I'll be back soon, Mom, so please don't cry." But the war went on, and he had to stay, and all I could do was wait and pray. His letter told of the awful fight. I can see it still in my dreams that night, with the tanks and the guns and the cruel barbed wire. Till at last, the war was won, and that's why we wear a poppy, son. The small boy turned as if to go, then said, "Thanks, lady, I'm glad to know. It sure did sound like an awful fight, but your son, did he come back all right?" A tear rolled down each faded cheek. She shook her head, but didn't speak. I slunk away in a sort of shame, and if you were me, you'd have done the same. For our thanks and giving is oft delayed, though our freedom was bought and thousands paid. And so, when we see a poppy worn, let us reflect on the burden borne by those who gave their very all when asked to answer their country's call, that we at home in peace might live. Then wear a poppy, remember, and give. Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant Commander Watkins. Ladies and gentlemen, as is our tradition, we recognize our naval losses, both military and merchant marine. First World War, 1914 to 1918, 225 Royal Canadian Navy sailors lost. Second World War, 1939 to 1945, 2,210 Royal Canadian Navy sailors lost or missing, 1,629 merchant sailors lost or missing. Korean War, 1950 to 1953. 9 Royal Canadian Navy sailors lost. It is also time to honor and remember all those who served Canada in times of war, military conflict, and peace, including the 158 soldiers and 4 civilians who died in conflict in Afghanistan. Additionally, we must also remember those who served in the Merchant Marines. If we could ask any war veteran who are willing to please stand and be recognized by your grateful peers. Thank you for your service. I would like to call upon Padre Paul Gimetti, who will come to dais to lead us in a naval prayer of remembrance.
If you have a bulletin with you, feel free to say it along with me, the naval prayer. O eternal Lord God, who alone spreads out the heavens and rules the raging of the sea, who has compassed the waters with bounds until day and night come to an end, be pleased to receive into thy almighty and most gracious protection the persons of us, thy servants, and the fleet in which we serve. Preserve us from the dangers of the sea and from the violence of the enemy, that we may be a safeguard unto our most gracious sovereign lady, Queen Elizabeth, and her dominions, and as security for such as pass on the seas upon their lawful occasions, that the inhabitants of our commonwealth may in peace and quietness serve thee, our God, and that we may return in safety to enjoy the blessings of the land, with the fruits of our labors, and with a thankful remembrance of thy mercies, to praise and glorify thy holy name. Amen.
On all the oceans the whitecaps flow, but they have no crosses, row on row. But they who sleep beneath the sea sleep in peace, for our country's free. We will remember them.
We will remember them.
Distinguished visitors, ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the last post, followed by 2 minutes of silence and reveille. of the naval hymn, Eternal Father, Strong to Save. Laying wreaths today on behalf of the Government of Canada, the Honorable Dan Vandel, Minister of Northern Affairs, Government of Canada. On behalf of the Province of Manitoba, the Honorable Heather Stephenson, Premier of Manitoba. On behalf of the City of Winnipeg, His Worship, Mayor Brian Bowman. On behalf of the Royal Canadian Navy, Lieutenant Commander Robert Watkins. On behalf of the Royal Canadian Air Force, Brigadier General Mark Golden, Deputy Commander, 1 Canadian Air Division. On behalf of HMCS Chippawa, Commander Michael Kuehl, Commanding Officer. On behalf of the Naval Officers Association of Canada, Mr. Ron Skelton. On behalf of all veterans, the Honorable John Reyes, Minister of Economic Development and Jobs, Province of Manitoba, Royal Canadian Navy veteran. Distinguished visitors, ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the retrieval of colors, playing of God Save the Queen, and departing of the official party. Color party, retrieve the colors.
Right, turn.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Color Party, march on the colors.
Aye, sir. Color party. Right, turn. Quick, march.
Drum major, take up drums.
Drummers, halt. Inward, turn. Unpile, drum. Drummers, right, turn. Quick, march.
March off the centuries.
Sentries. Present arms. Shoulder arms. Quick, march.
Ladies and gentlemen, military personnel, friends and family of Chippawa, and our veterans, this concludes our Remembrance Day service. I thank each of you for joining us this morning. On behalf of the commanding officer, I would like to thank you for your support and attendance today. Please take the rest of the day to remember. Good morning. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our Remembrance Day ceremony. Thank you for your attendance. Thank you, sir.